Hey everyone, it's Heidi here. I have something very different today, and this video might be long-winded, so I apologize for that, I guess. I don't know. Starting these things off is always the hard part, in my opinion. As soon as I get going about something, I can just talk and talk and talk, but just figuring out how to open the conversation has always been, I don't know, a weakness of mine, I guess. Um, So you've probably been able to guess based on the title. I don't know what the title is yet, of course, but something about my mental health. Um, that today's not the greatest day for me. By the way, I'm recording a parking lot instead of my face because nobody wants to see my fucking face. I don't ever want to fucking see my face again, but um, yeah, I'm sitting in this parking lot because I felt like I didn't want to be home. Um, because I saw some things that brought up some emotions for me. Um, I'm gonna have to provide context for this later on in the video, but what I saw specifically was just a post on Facebook. It was a bunch of pictures of cats at the veterinarian's office, just like finding inventive places to try to hide. Um, in a couple of those pictures, the cat was like trying to bury itself in its owner's arms. Um, that fucked me up bad. Like, I started crying, like legitimately, like sobbing in my bed looking at this. I haven't been awake very long. It's nighttime, but I'm a night guard, so my shift doesn't start till midnight. It's like 8 something. But yeah, I saw that and it fucked me up. It really did. I'm sure that sounds really weird, but I was alluding to some context. Here we go. So, just, I don't know, several days ago, I turned 25. So I'm 25 years old. I'm transgender of some sort. Uh, I work as a night guard. I live in Kentucky, in the United States. Um, Today's date is like March 8th, 2020, something along those lines. March 8th, March 7th. Um, I think it's the 7th. But how did I end up here? So I consider Fort Wayne, Indiana, or at least the area around it, to be my hometown. I wasn't actually born there, but I mostly grew up there. I left Fort Wayne in 2015. You see, in the summer of 2012, which was the summer before my senior year of high school, was when I first started to question my gender and I came to realize some things about myself. And my brother and his friends were the first to know because they were more like parental figures to me than my actual parents were, and they were very like open about things and just like cool about stuff. So I came out to them first. Um, that was in fall of that year, fall of 2012. In December of 2012, I don't remember the exact day, but sometime that month, I told my parents that I was transgender, and that did not go over well. Um, they stopped teaching me to drive at that point. I didn't have my license yet. I was still in high school. I was like 17. Um, they stopped teaching me to drive, which in the United States, you need to know how to drive unless you live in like fucking LA or New York or Chicago or something, which Fort Wayne is none of those cities, especially not like the little like suburb of it we were in that was like not in the middle of the city. So public transport wasn't really going to be a thing. I needed to know how to drive if I was going to work. But they stopped teaching me to drive, so I didn't get my license. They did let me finish high school, and I had just barely managed to. Um, Technically, I don't think I should have finished on time, but I was in like a remedial math class, and while I technically failed it, they bumped me up a percentage or two with extra credit to make sure that I would get through. And so I graduated high school on time by the fucking grace of my teacher, who felt bad for me. But um, so I finished high school, and that would have been in summer of 2013. And for a couple of years there, I was just stuck at my parents' house out there in Northeast Indiana. I couldn't work because I didn't have a license. My parents were teaching me to drive. My friends couldn't for various reasons. Either they didn't have a license themselves, they didn't have a car, um, random various reasons. So I didn't have any other family that lived in the area. All of my family lives down here in Appalachia. Um, so there were a couple years where nothing was happening until in March 2015 for my birthday, I bought my first articles of like women's clothing. It was just like some leggings and a skirt and some flip flops or something. Like not a huge deal. Oh, and like one dress. But as soon as I started wearing that stuff, that's when things really fell apart. Uh, and by the end of the month, it had come to a head, and I was out with a friend. I was at his house. And I got a text from my older brother. He was telling me that my parents were talking about kicking me out. So I texted my mom and I gave her the ultimatum. I was like, this is the way shit is, or like, it just is. Like, there's no other way around it. I don't know how else to say it. Like, I can't not be me. Um, and that was, of course, not cool with them. And so they told me, come home, get your shit, get out. So I did. Um, so I couldn't work. I didn't have a license. I didn't have a car. I didn't really have any money. I had like a couple $100. That was it. Um, so a friend off Facebook that I had met through like just like random political shit had already told me like ages ago that they would just straight up take me in if anything ever happened. Because this was an older woman, probably like in her 40s or something, 40s, early 50s, who had a family of her own. But the thing is, her husband worked for Saudi Aramco. Like he wasn't even there most of the time because he lived and worked in Saudi, and he would just like come back on vacation sometimes. Um, and so they were pretty fucking loaded, to be honest. They weren't like mansion and Bel Air rich, but fucking I don't even know if there's mansions in Bel Air, to be honest. I just kind of spat that out, but they were pretty well off to the point that taking me in and getting me hormones and all that shit was just like pocket change to them. Absolutely nothing. So we arranged to have me fly down there to a coastal city in North Carolina to live with them. But there were 10 days before that flight where I was still stuck in Fort Wayne, so I couch surfed from friend's house to friend's house. The flight came, and I went down there. Everything seemed mostly cool at first. I gotta say, the house was a bit off putting. When I got there, it was an absolute mess. It reeked of cat piss. It's just like a choking wall of cat piss reek. um, they had 5 cats and 3 dogs and 2 turtles, like kind of like pet hoarders. There was just pet hair and shit and piss everywhere. Um, Including myself, there were 4 people that lived there. All 4 of us were adults. I was the second youngest. There was one guy who was like a year younger than me. Um, he had a fucking anger problem, like hardcore. He just he was like the ultimate spoiled kid, I guess. Like if you ever asked anything of him, anything that interrupted him just sitting up in his room and playing racing games all day, he would scream like blood curdling, howling screams of rage if you so much as asked him to take out the trash or something. He was fucking insane, and he had road rage like a motherfucker. Um, the other two, there was the woman that took me in. I think she was a narcissist. Uh, she just thought everyone was such a fucking idiot, and she treated the rest of us like we were like just there to serve her. Um, and she would just get so angry all of a sudden, like, and you wouldn't even really notice until she said something, and you were like, the tone of her voice still sounded fine. She almost sounded like she was joking, but then you realized, like, no, she's fucking furious. Like, I remember there was this one time we were in the kitchen and she was getting something, and like there were a bunch of dishes that weren't done yet because it was like 8 in the fucking morning. Um, she just started going off on me. She's like, "Do you like living in filth?" Like she said it kind of like that tone and everything. And at first I was like, "What? Hold on a second. What's going on here?" And then I just kind of I froze. I froze, and she asked again. She's like, "Do you like living in filth?" I was just like, no." And she's like, "Well, why isn't this place fucking clean then?" And just shit like that. I was the only one cleaning because there was the kid with the anger issue. There was her. She didn't do anything. She was bedridden all the time. Um, Migraines, vertigo, all kinds of stuff. Side effects from polycystic kidneys. Some of it was definitely real. The rest of it, I don't know. I just don't know. Um, the last like permanent member of the household was her brother, who he had 3 kidneys in him and none of them worked. They both got polycystic kidneys from their parent, their dad, I guess, is where they inherited it. He'd already had an implant and it rejected and everything, so he had 3 useless kidneys in his body. He was hooked up to a dialysis machine all the time. Towards the end of my stay there, he had congestive heart failure, and then like a couple months after I left, he fucking died. Because it turns out he had cancer too. He had like lung and kidney cancer, and he had the congestive heart failure, and none of his kidneys worked anyways. And he got an infection, is ultimately what killed him, because like he was on his immune drugs and everything. Probably an infection from living that godforsaken used cat litter hell world. But um, so that was its own adventure in hell. Uh, Towards the end of my time there, I was afraid to leave my room. I pretended to be asleep all the time. I tried to time leaving my room to when everyone else would be asleep or away. Um, at night, I would sneak out of my room and I would grab a couple handfuls of pretzels because there was like nothing else in the house. Like nobody ever cooked unless I did, and of course I wasn't gonna leave my room, so all we had was like snack stuff, and among that, all we really had was like pretzels. So I'd grab a couple handfuls of pretzels at night and a glass of water and go back to my room, and that would be like my rations until the next night when I could do it over again. It may not surprise you to hear that I lost 100 pounds living at this place, but um, so eventually things just kept getting worse. I was doing everything around the house aside from the stuff that required driving because they still wouldn't let me get my license. That was one of the things they promised me before I moved there. They promised me that I would be their new daughter, that they would get me my license, they would give me my hormones, they would give me everything, and I would be on the right track. Um, and almost none of that played out. They got me my hormones and some new clothes. But then, other than that, it was just the whole time like, now's your turn to repay us. um, and so eventually it got to the point where they decided my cleaning wasn't good enough for them. And so they had to hire a maid, was their solution. And they said I was going to pay for it, which I still didn't have a car. This place was even more remote than where I was living in Indiana. So there was no way in hell I was going to be able to work without a car or a license. So I had no money, and they knew this. They knew I had no money. They knew I had no way to get it, but they still demanded for me to pay for a maid for them because my cleaning was not to their satisfaction. Um, I don't know. I don't know what their end game with that was. Like why they were asking for money from someone who definitely didn't have any and didn't have any way to get it, and they knew that. I don't know if they expected me to like end up being another trans sex worker just to fucking support them, or if they just found it fun. I don't know. Um, so eventually, my girlfriend came and got me in the middle of the night. This would have been August 2016. She came and got me in the middle of the night one night. I packed up all my shit without anyone knowing, and I just ducked out. Uh, I had to leave behind a bunch of my shit at that place because I couldn't carry it. But at this point, just getting out of there was necessary. No matter what, I had to leave. So I started living with my girlfriend in Raleigh at her apartment that she had at the time. She had her own mental health struggles. We had a good relationship, and I never felt with her like I was being used or abused or neglected or anything. I always thought that she was so good to me, like in ways that nobody else really had been before. Um, so I tried my best to do what she wanted from me and try to help her out because I knew she was struggling. And fuck, I'm sorry. And so we lived there for almost a year. Um, Things were mostly okay. She was having a really hard time, and I was starting to come apart a bit myself, but I was still functional enough to do our shopping and keep up with reminding her about bills. I finally started working because there's enough public transport in Raleigh that it was possible. So I still didn't have a license, but I did get my permit. I went out and did that myself, and I was using the bus system there to work at a grocery store at the time, just for minimum wage, and it was just part-time, but that was about all I could handle. And she made enough from her tech job because she's a fair bit older than me. She's like 12 years older than me. That we could keep this apartment, and it wasn't even really that much of a struggle. Like there were times when I couldn't keep my hormones, like I'd have to go off them for a couple months or something. um, there's a lot worse fates than that, so I was fine with it. I was pretty happy there, aside from dealing with the fallout of everything that had happened leading up to that. But eventually, her struggles got to the point where she couldn't really work anymore, and she got laid off, I guess, is technically what happened. Her employers tried everything they did to keep her because she was so, I don't know, knowledgeable, skilled, talented at her work, that before all that happened, like, they loved her. They absolutely loved her. And then when they saw her start to come apart like that, like, they wanted to hold on and give her every chance to try to spring back, and through no fault of her own, she just couldn't. Like, what happened to her was too much. Sorry. So when she lost her job, there's no way my part-time minimum wage bullshit was gonna carry this apartment. Like this place was like $600 to $800 a month or something, which isn't even that bad. But yeah, she had to move back in with her mother, and I was left trying to find somewhere else to go. And we had already known that this would probably happen. We had talked about it. She did what she could for me, but I got back in contact with my parents, spoke to them for the first time since March of 2015. This was probably January or February of 2017 at this point. I was asking them, I was trying to get access to this like educational account my great grandparents had left for me when they died, just because I wanted to get that money so like I could get a place to stay somewhere. I had been looking for roommates and all that shit. Um, and it just wasn't working out. And I needed that money to buy myself some time. But instead of giving me the money, they were just like, well, fuck it, just move back in. Just they had the condition that I had to like dress and present myself as male. Um, at first, I didn't want to do this. At first, I was just like, fuck this, I'm just going to join the fucking military instead. I left Indiana slash got myself kicked out, sort of. Because I knew things were going to come to a head if I poked the bear. So it was kind of my fault, I guess, that I got kicked out. But I felt like I had to do something. Something had to change, or else, like, I don't know what. Like, I was going to hurt myself, maybe. Um, because I just couldn't live that way anymore. I just couldn't. It was killing me. I could not live that way anymore. And so here I am asking them for help to have a place to stay so I'm not like literally on the street in Raleigh. Um, and they want me to go back to that. And so, of course, at first I was like, fuck you. That's not ever happening. But I don't know. Eventually I came to my senses and I realized like I had to go back to that or else I was going to be in the street in Raleigh. And between the two, that would probably be the more survivable option to just go back to my parents. So I did. That's how I ended up here. They had moved here from Indiana by then. So I'm living with my parents right now. My girlfriend from Raleigh actually lives with me now too. She didn't come with me originally, but she couldn't stay with her mother anymore and she had nowhere else to go. So we had a spare room. So I invited her in and I didn't even really tell my parents that I was moving her in until she got here. It's a whole fucked up story. That's one for another video probably. Or maybe not. I don't know. I don't know that I really want to get into all that necessarily. But so recently I got diagnosed with PTSD. Um, which we had already suspected for a while because that's what my girlfriend has, and she was like, "Wow, this all seems a lot like what I went through." Um, and my counselor, I was seeing a counselor when I moved here, and he said, "Yeah, that looks like PTSD." And then I started seeing a psychologist, who I'm still seeing now, um, and she was like, "Yeah, this is PTSD." So I guess that's that's about as official as it gets. I don't know, like, I'm on a shitload of medications for it. I take buspirone, metoprolol, and Vistaril for my anxiety. Um, and I have Klonopin to use as needed, which I thankfully don't feel the need to use it too often. Um, I tried a lot of stuff, but this is the combination that worked for me. Just to get the panic attacks under control. Obviously, I'm still not feeling too great, but at least I don't have constant panic attacks, so that's cool. I am working. I have finally got my license. I don't have my own car yet, but I'm working on it. I'm thinking about going to school at some point. Things are technically looking up, but after I moved here, I fucking fell apart. I really did. I don't know why, because, like, I don't know, you'd think if anything it would have been in Raleigh when things were so, like, unsure, when things were so unsafe. Like, as much as the things between Melissa and I were fine, I didn't know, like, if I was gonna have a house, like, the next day at any point the whole time I was there. Like, so you'd think that would be when I would start having all kinds of panic attacks and shit. But no, it didn't start until I came here, and I guess what happened is I must have let my guard down, and a whole bunch of stuff that I had just been bottling up finally came out because I felt safe enough. Um, I don't know. I don't know. But I don't know if you can see that sheriff that just drove by, but that's making me a bit anxious. I don't want him to like stop and bother me because I'm just like sitting in the parking lot on my phone. Okay, he seems to be driving off. I think I'm good. Um, fuck. I don't know what my deal is. I don't know necessarily where the trauma came from. I think really what it is just that like there's a whole series of like maternal figures that have rejected me between my own like birth mother when I got kicked out, and we had already not been getting along before I even came out as trans for various reasons, but and then the woman in Elizabeth City wanted to be my mother too, or at least that's what she said, until I became like the target of her hatred as well. And my girlfriend being so much older than me and like kind of taking care of me sort of in Raleigh, like it's almost like she's another maternal figure now. And thankfully she's been great to me, but like my whole life just seems to be like a series of maternal figures like that I'm desperate to have like love me and they don't, and I run away. That's why I'm out here today, is because I'm running away because I saw those pictures and I started crying, and I just didn't want to be at that house anymore. I just wanted to get out here and get away from it and have some time to myself and like listen to music and distract myself by trying to drive. It wasn't working out so great. Um, I I don't know how to put it. I've been looking into like age regression stuff, which I would usually be embarrassed to admit publicly, but at this point, like, what the fuck ever anymore. Like, it feels like my life is already just like ruined. So like, why give a shit? Um, my psych that I'm seeing, I mentioned this to her, and she told me to do like an exercise, I guess, where I have a stuffed bunny it's not from my childhood. I don't have like anything left over from my childhood at this point from all the moving around, but I bought this bunny from Build-A-Bear like last year or something. Yeah, it would have been last year. And she told me to pretend that it's like a child that needs nurtured, like especially like think of it. She said like treat it how you think you should have been treated as a child or something along those lines. I don't know. Like in a lot of ways, I don't really ever think of myself as like deserving anything at any point in my life, but um, to look at this thing and see how like small and vulnerable it is, and to try to imagine it's something that needs care, um, it really fucks with me. If you couldn't tell. And I don't know why. I don't know why. Like, I don't think any of my trauma is from like early childhood, but all of these things, like the cats trying to hide in their mother's arms, and this exercise she's having me do with my bunny, where it's like my child almost, and how sometimes I feel like I'm my girlfriend's kid, and I seek protection and comfort from her. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's all so weird to me. I guess part of the reason why I'm making this is just to put it out there and like see if anyone else can relate, has similar experiences, anything that they can try to use to like contextualize this for me, I guess. Because I don't understand. It's not like, as far as I know, like no one touched me as a kid, like sexually. And I wasn't physically abused, at least not to an extent that would be foreign to most kids. Like I was spanked a couple times, but I was never like beaten. It's just like a spanking because I had done some dumb, annoying shit, and it was a punishment. Um, and even that stopped pretty early on. But I don't know why. I don't know why these images of like vulnerability and like childlike things and like maternal sort of relationships, like care of things from a maternal figure, just fucking break me. I can't. I don't get it, but I don't know. It's fucked up because I can still remember some moments from my early childhood. I can still remember like specific moments where I was being held by my mother and she was like singing lullabies to me or like reading to me. But of course, at the same time, I have memories from sort of the end of when I was in high school. Like, there was one morning she followed me into my room after I'd come down to get breakfast, and she followed me back up there, and she was telling me, like, you're gonna be all stitched up and scarred like some kind of Frankenstein monster, and how is anyone ever going to love you? Like, why would you be a woman? Because you're not into men. Don't you want to marry a woman? Don't you want to find love someday? You're never going to. You're never going to. If you're going to be this way. And those are one lifespan. Two memories from the same like continuous story of my life. And I have no idea how to reconcile those two. From being from being held and sung to as a baby to being told that I'm a fucking unlovable abomination as a almost young adult. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me, but it happened. I'm back with them now, and they seem to regret how things happened in 2015. And I do too. Um, it seemed to have hurt them a lot. Maybe not as much as it did me, but probably close at least. I don't feel good about it. There's some part of me that wants to take that like childish position of revenge where I'm like, good, they were hurt too. Fuck them, they deserve it. But it's just not. That doesn't satisfy me. I don't. I don't get any comfort out of that. No matter what happens now, the fact of the matter is that all those things did happen, and that's the part that's the problem for me, and nothing that fails to address that makes any of this any better. But of course, that can't be changed. It's the past now. It's done. Like, that's it. And here I am in my car in a fucking Walmart parking lot, crying, asking random ass people on YouTube to help me understand why I'm fucked up the way that I am. Like, I don't know. I'm just not. I'm not feeling it tonight. I have to go to work in a couple hours too. That's gonna be great. Um, I don't know. I'm having a hard time. I'm sorry this video is depressing as fuck. But for real though, like if anyone can relate, if anyone might be able to understand some more of what I'm going through, educate me a bit more about my own condition, like I don't know. I'm looking for anything right now. Anything helps. I feel so alone. I feel like a stranger to myself. I feel like none of this makes any sense. It's rough. Um, I think I'm just gonna stop here. I think I've said all I really wanted or needed to. Yeah. Um, See you next time.